went down to the press conference to be announced that I was the general manager. And I'll never forget, I had my suit on, extremely proud day, had my kids there. I mean, obviously, one of the better days of my NFL career. And I went back up to my office, and I'll never forget sitting down at my desk, and literally this overwhelming feeling came about. And I literally put my hands in my head and thought, what the fuck do I do now?
During your time as a general manager, what were some of the trades or acquisitions you made, or even draft picks that you're most proud of?
Chandler Jones, from the time I traded for him to the time he finished his time with the Cardinals, had the most sacks in the NFL during that period.
You got tons of love too for the DeAndre Hopkins trade. So how did that? I mean, that was one that like got a lot of media attention. I feel like when people talk about you, a lot of times they talk about that trade because it seemed on the surface like a one-sided trade, and like you won that deal. How'd that trade go down?
Did I really trade for DeAndre Hopkins? Yeah. Also hoping that it wouldn't get out, because my thought was if it got out and if Bill took some heat for it, because DeAndre is such a popular player, is he going to now come back on the deal?
Yeah. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Next Up podcast. I'm Adam Breneman. We're in Scottsdale, Arizona today, talking to my man, Steve Keim, former general manager of the Arizona Cardinals, two-time NFL Executive of the Year. He had a great career with the Cardinals. Now getting into some media, he's got a great perspective on the NFL, on the game of football. He's going to tell some great stories. I love Steve. You guys are going to love him too. Before we get to the pod, please subscribe to this podcast. Press that subscribe button below. If you're listening on audio, subscribe to it there as well. All your guys' support allows me to travel around the country, have one amazing guest that show you an inside look at football, NFL, college, personnel, scouting, all the things that you've never seen before talked about in the game of football. So please press that subscribe button and support the podcast. Let's go talk to him. Before we get to the pod, I got to tell you about our new sponsor, Caldera Lab, and I am fired up. Because of Caldera Lab, I'm able to put my best face forward. How do I do that? By adding a skincare routine from Caldera Lab into my day every single day. Now, I know what you're saying. There's no way this guy sticks to a skincare routine, but joke's on you, because there's no way this face stays this clean and looks this good without it. And honestly, it's not that hard. I just needed the tools, and now I have them from Caldera Lab. Here's some insight on my personal routine. Number one, the Clean Slate. It's a face wash that starts and ends every single day for me. Number two, the base layer, a moisturizer that hydrates my skin. And number three, the Good, a bedtime night serum that has my skin feeling tighter and smoother than ever before. The skincare world is not just for females anymore, it's for men too, and it's doing wonders for me. So what are y'all waiting for? Go to calderalab.com/AdamB for 20% off their best products. That's a huge discount at calderalab.com/AdamB. And guys, supporting our sponsors like Caldera Lab supports me and allows me to do this podcast every single week for all of you. So please support Caldera Lab at calderalab.com/AdamB for 20% off. Before we get to the pod, I want to tell you all about Athletic Greens. And let me tell you, when I found out about this sponsor, I was fired up because I've been using Athletic Greens for years, and I want to promote to you guys the things I actually use. I love Athletic Greens. As a former Division I athlete, I've tried countless supplements, and recently my nutrition and my health has become a bigger deal for me as I get farther away from my playing career. And let me tell you, Athletic Greens is the real deal. Has me feeling healthy and energized every single day. With as much as I'm on the road, traveling, shooting podcasts, it's hard to have a healthy diet, hard to have healthy nutrition, hard for me to get my vitamins and minerals every single day. My doctor even told me that last time I saw him. But with Athletic Greens, I get 75 plus vitamins, minerals, and a bunch of other healthy things. I don't even know what they are, but I know they're good for you. And when I wake up every single day now, I feel energized, my digestion has never been better, and I'm ready to attack each and every day because of Athletic Greens and AG1. So if you want to take ownership of your health like I am right now, try AG1 today at drinkag1.com/nextup, and you get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs when you go to my link, tryag1.com/nextup. And guys, all of you who support this podcast, you guys supporting our sponsors helps me a ton. So please go support AG1 and support Next Up through the process and optimize your health and nutrition today. drinkag1.com/nextup. Check it out. Next Up. I've been wanting to have you on the pod for a long time, man. And it's been number one, you're from my hometown, so that's a cool connection. As soon as I came out here at ASU, you're one of the first people I talked to, and It's been great being close with you, and just how you doing, man? How
Doing
you
great.
enjoying being out of the NFL grind?
Yeah, I mean, being unemployed is usually a term that you say with not so much oomph, but in this situation, after working for 25 years for the same organization, 10 as the general manager, it's been nice to sort of decompress and take a step back and see what's next.
Yeah. Now, I'm excited. There's so much I want to talk to you about. There's just so many different things, but as much as I've known you, I've never heard the story of your career, how you got to this point, to being the GM of the Cardinals for 10 years and all the successes you've had. I feel like I've never heard. I was like thinking about it actually on the drive over here. Like, how did you get started and how did you get, everyone I feel like has a big break, right? Like what was your big break? Like, tell me the story of how we'll start there.
I think it goes back to when I was a young guy. I was 8 or 9 years old, and for whatever reason, I was so enamored with college scouting and the recruiting aspect, and it just always interested me. So as I got older, and I always sort of followed recruiting and the NFL draft, I just got consumed with wanting to be a scout and a general manager one day, and not necessarily knowing at that point in time what it took. Yeah. But went off to college, to NC State, had a nice career, was a 3-year starter and all ACC player, but not a tremendous talent that the guys that I ended up watching over the years and trying to draft. But it was fun. It provided me a platform going to a school like NC State to be able to know NFL scouts and executives, to be able to, after my playing career, have an opportunity to get a scouting position. I went to the Miami Dolphins as a free agent, got hurt there. Again, sort of was going to be a long shot, knowing my upside. But it was funny, though, when I went to the Dolphins, the two guys that I hung and roomed with right away during the rookie portion of it was Zach Thomas and Larry Izzo. Two guys that were both undersized. One was a draft pick in the 5th round. One was a college free agent. And both went on to have tremendous careers. One obviously just is going to be inducted to the Hall of Fame. So needless to say, those guys fared a little bit better than I did, although my career lasted a little longer than theirs did. So I believe Larry's still a special teams coach for the Seattle Seahawks, doing well there. Zach is retired, obviously, and just got the news he was inducted to the Hall of Fame. So. But after I was done playing, I went back to NC State for a year and got in to be a graduate assistant coach and let everybody know that was coming through NC State to look at players. Fortunately, we had Torrey Holt, who was, I believe, the 6th pick in the draft. A number of general managers came through and had 2 different teams, the Eagles and the Cardinals, talk to me, and they were looking for young area scouts at the time. So threw my name in the hat and interviewed with both teams and felt like the Arizona Cardinal position was one that had some upside for me.
What was that life as an area scout like? You're on the road all the time, traveling to
yeah. It was
what are you, like early 20s?
Yeah, I was 25 years old when I started, and it was a grind. People think that the scouting life is sort of glamorous.
Yeah,
and I think you probably know that from recruiting a little bit. It's not like you're staying in the Four Seasons and you're driving around in town cars. It's on and off of airplanes, and you go into different cities, which you have a tremendous opportunity to see the world, or I should say, see the country. And I've been everywhere from Bangor, Maine, to Fargo, North Dakota. So I've gotten an opportunity to see the country, which has been a great opportunity for me. But it is not very fun. I mean, it's a grind. You have to love it. You get into each town and you have an opportunity to go to Florida State one day and you're looking at 11 players. And then the next day you go to, maybe Florida Atlantic, and then maybe the next day Miami. And you're bouncing around trying to hit schools generally in that region. But as you get to the next town, or you get to the next hotel, you may get to the next Courtyard Marriott or the Fairfield Inn or whatever hotel it is. You're not going out and having a steak and a beer. You're going to sit in your hotel room
per diem.
and you're drinking coffee, and you're trying to get through the scouting reports that you have to write that night, which generally a lot of the better players took an hour to write. And you had to stay caught up. And if you got behind, you were in real trouble.
Was there someone in your career, I feel like when you're a coach, you come up and you kind of like take the offense from the coach that you worked under. Was there a scout, a director, player personnel, a GM who you kind of learn how to evaluate from, and like everyone kind of has their own evaluation style that you learned from during that time?
Well, I mean, I think, I learned a lot from our general manager, Rod Graves, at the time, who, really sort of opened up the door for me and sort of pulled back the curtains to show me what he did on a daily basis, which was a great opportunity again for myself to learn. But just being on the road, I mean, you'd be around guys like John Schneider, the Seahawks GM, or I'd be around different general managers that I respected, whether it was Ron Wolf or Ted Thompson, and guys who were really highly respected evaluators. And I had a chance to ask them questions. Kevin Colbert with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. You get to be very close to all those people just because of the business, because of the travel demands. And you're in the same scouting room. The most colleges like Penn State and NC State and the different schools you go to, they give you one room to watch the film, and you're generally in there. And you can be in there with a general manager all the way down to an area scout. Yeah. And at that point in time when I was young, I tried to keep my mouth shut and listen and learn as much as I can. Yeah. And thankful that the business was a brotherhood, that you really did feel like you learned a lot from those older guys that paid it forward, really.
So how did you get the GM job? Did I know timing comes into like how'd you get it? How'd you find out you got it? Give me that story.
Well, I was fortunate enough for whatever reason, I got some feedback from other teams during the time that I was the vice president of player personnel that there was interest in me as a general manager throughout the NFL. So prior to the Cardinals GM job opening up, I had an opportunity to interview for the Rams general manager job, which now is held by Les Snead. Yeah. That job I interviewed for. I interviewed with a couple other teams, Jacksonville Jaguars, San Diego Chargers at the time, and really enjoyed having the opportunity to talk to other teams and sort of see what that path would take. Obviously, in 2012. Our head coach and our general manager were let go, and I had the opportunity to interview for the job, and then I was part of the coaching search. Once I was hired, so I'll never forget. We were in New York, of all places, interviewing Bill O'Brien, and Bill O'Brien was still the Penn State coach at the time, and Bill O'Brien was kind enough to tell us that he was going to pass on the Cardinal opening, which he was not offered the job, to make it clear. But he did interview with us at a hotel in downtown New York, and I'll never forget going back to the Teterboro Airport to get on the plane. We had not I had not been offered the job officially yet, and it was sort of awkward because I obviously had to protect myself and had interest in other teams, and we pull up to the Teterboro Airport, and there were two jets there, and one was the Cardinals, and I had to tell our owner at the time that I was getting on the other jet to go to Jacksonville and interview for that GM position. So they were waiting for me to take me down to Jacksonville, and needless to say, I think that maybe helped my chances a little bit, push the envelope.
Give you some leverage.
A little bit of leverage to push the envelope. That and you know, no disrespect to the Jaguars, but the Cardinal job was in my heart, and it was something that I certainly wanted at the time and was comfortable with, and just because of the time that I'd spent with the organization, it was a special opportunity for myself.
Yeah, so cool that you've been able to be in one spot for 25 years?
25
that's
years.
So rare too, right? I mean, that's
it's
awesome.
really rare. I mean, I think Brian Gutekunst, who's the GM of the Packers, he and myself were the only general managers that started at the very bottom and worked their way to the top of their respective organizations.
How'd Bill O'Brien do in that interview?
Bill was great, you know, because he
was probably coaching me at the time.
He was, and he I knew Bill back from the days I scouted when he was all the way at Georgia Tech, so had a good relationship with him. We were, extremely happy that he was honest with us, and he really gave us some good insight to different coaches around the league that he respected, and sort of how they ran things in New England, and how he did things at Penn State at the time. And then obviously went on to the Texans, and I was able to work with him on some trades.
The famous D-Hop trade. That was one of my questions for later. We'll get into that. When you became the GM, what was something that what was like, do you remember like the first challenging moment you had, or the first, learning curve you had when you're like, oh, I didn't, everyone's prepared for the moment.
Yeah.
Right? I asked Jed Fish this yesterday when you first time head coach, like, what's the first, you think you got all the answers, and the first thing that comes up and you're like, shit, I forgot, I got to be ready for that.
The very first thing is I went to the January 9th, 2013, I went down to the press conference to be announced that I was the general manager. And I'll never forget, I had my suit on, extremely proud day, had my kids there. I mean, obviously, one of the better days of my NFL career. And I went back up to my office, and I'll never forget sitting down at my desk, and literally this overwhelming feeling came about. And I literally put my hands in my head and thought, what the fuck do I do now? And it was like, I worked my whole career, 13, 14 years in the NFL to get this opportunity. Yeah. And I'm sitting there blanking out, overwhelmed with stress and fear of what do I do now? And I had to quickly come to grips with understanding that I needed to find a head coach and then obviously find a quarterback. And luckily enough, I found a York County native, and Bruce Arians is our head coach, another 717 guy. And
was he Redland?
No, he was York.
York, that's
right. Got it. And then obviously, to be able to make a trade for Carson Palmer, who went on to have several great years for us.
How'd you know that Bruce Arians was the coach to hire?
You know what? He just we went through the search, and when you go through those exhaustive searches, and I went through 3 of them in my career with our owner. You just have an instinctive feel like you do a lot of things in life. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's a lot of different traits that you look for in a head coach, but in that situation, felt like we needed a guy who was a disciplinarian, who would be hard on the guys, yet at the same time, commanded the respect of the room. And Bruce was a great fit for us. He was a great fit for me. We were 20 years in difference, but we grew up 20 miles apart. Yeah. You and I probably grew up 4 miles or 5 miles apart. Yeah. But there's something in the water back there that just felt like it was special. And
he's a character too.
Oh, he is. What you see is what you get. And we had a lot of fun. We worked great together. We could agree to disagree, yet at the same time, a lot of our core beliefs were very similar.
Yeah. What was, during your time as a general manager, what were some of the trades or acquisitions you made, or even draft picks that you're most proud of? Before we get back to the pod, guys, here's the reality. It is summertime. Summertime means more fun, more ladies, more time on the beach. And what's crucial during that time? You have to look good, top to bottom, literally. The way I make sure I'm looking good and fresh and light every day in the summer is with Manscaped. The Performance Package 4.0 has me feeling my best. Last time I was at the pool about 2 weeks ago, I had the shirt off, my face was clean, I was groomed well below, and my confidence was at an all-time high, and it paid dividends for me. Here's why I love the Performance Package 4.0. The Performance Package 4.0 has everything you could ever need to keep you looking your best. It comes with the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance boxer briefs, and even a travel bag to hold all your tools. Trust me, guys, you don't want to miss out on this bundle. So guys, go to manscaped.com and use my code ADAMB for 20% off and free shipping to get what you need to be feeling good this summer. That's code ADAMB at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. And guys, supporting the sponsors of this podcast like Manscaped helps support me and allows me to do this podcast every week for all of you. So go to manscaped.com, use my code ADAMB for 20% off and free shipping. During your time as a general manager, what were some of the trades or acquisitions you made, or even draft picks that you're most proud of, that you can hang your hat on and say, these are like, I was right on this one?
I think the trades were really big for me, and I know they're sort of a crapshoot in the NFL, but you can honestly look at a drafting record and say, a lot of ups and downs. It's an inexact science. There are things that I would change if I could go back and have that opportunity, but they were learning lessons. My trades, I feel like I did a very good job in that area. Chandler Jones, trading for Kenyon Drake at the time when he was a back that we needed. There were several. Carson Palmer. I can go on with a number of those guys that we traded for that stepped in and had immediate success for, and were great fits for us. Yeah. Chandler Jones was a tough one because we needed a pass rusher, and to call Bill Belichick on the phone and to talk to Bill about trading for Chandler, and once he agreed that we may have something in principle, to realize that you were trading with Bill Belichick, a guy that knew more football than you could ever.
Why is he trading him?
Yeah. Why is he trading him to me? And to really be sort of like,
What's he know?
What does he know that I don't know?
Yeah.
And to really wonder why he would do this, and maybe how I might have screwed this up. Yet at the same time, looking back on it, just goes to show you it isn't an exact science. Chandler Jones, from the time I traded for him to the time he finished his time with the Cardinals, had the most sacks in the NFL during that period. So I know it was over 100 sacks.
Yeah. You got tons of love too for the DeAndre Hopkins trade. So how did that? I mean, that was one that like got a lot of media attention. I feel like when people talk about you, a lot of times they talk about that trade because it seemed on the surface like a one-sided trade and like you won that deal. How'd that trade go down? Was it D-Hop for David Johnson? Right?
And then we and then a 4th round pick. Yeah. We gave a 4th round pick, and I believe they had given us a 4th round pick. I'm trying to remember. No, I think it was a D-Hop and then a 4th round pick the following year.
Got it.
Either way, it was crazy because it was essentially around the time that the new league year started in March, which is the time that free agency begins. And I don't know if you remember this, but during that period, it was when COVID struck. And during that period of time, the NFL came out and they said there was no physicals allowed, so we couldn't travel players because of COVID.
Yeah.
We couldn't have any visits. We could not have any medical examinations, which in the NFL, as you know, almost every trade, or I should say every trade, is really pending physical, making sure that the players are healthy. So we couldn't have anybody travel. We were trying to do free agency, during the pandemic when you're basically going by word that, we have a deal in place. Mm-hmm. So Bill and I made the deal right prior to free agency. And obviously it was an enormous deal.
Yeah.
David Johnson for D-Hop and a lot of things that we had to do financially because, upon the trade, we also agreed to redo some contract stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'll never forget, we were put in basically a holding pattern, which was scary as hell because after you make a trade of that magnitude, you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, well, let's consummate this deal. And that has to be in ink. It has to be with medical exams. And needless to say, we couldn't do any of it.
Yeah.
So I would call Bill every couple of days and just check in because I was literally waking up thinking to myself, first of all, it was awkward because I'm laying around in my pool every day or getting on my computer watching film from home because the office wasn't even open, let alone did I really trade for DeAndre Hopkins?
Yeah.
So my owner and myself would talk every couple of days. I'm probably every day at that period of time, and I'll never forget. We'd be like, is this really going to go through? And then also hoping that it wouldn't get out, because my thought was if it got out, and if Bill took some heat for it, because DeAndre is such a popular player, is he going to now come back on the deal? And luckily enough for us, it finally got worked out. Also goes to show you how things can be kept secret in the NFL to some degree, because at that point in time, we were able to keep that under wraps for probably about a month.
I feel like things get leaked so much nowadays.
They do. I mean,
how do you deal with that?
I mean, the two biggest things, the DeAndre Hopkins trade and the J.J. Watt signing, were the two biggest things in my career that never got leaked, which really go back to prove to me that it can be done. Yet at the same time, it is not the norm. The norm now is anything that you can imagine. Schefter, Rappaport, Glaze, somebody's got it. And it puts a lot of stress on you because, you want to be able to be held to your word and to be an upstanding guy. Yet at the same time, when stuff gets leaked, you feel like almost like, are they going to look at me and think that I did it? When in reality, I would think that most agents leak that information because it's not beneficial to the team in a lot of situations. It's more beneficial to the agents and the player.
Do you ever get a call from Glazer, Schefter, and they're like, I know you're doing this trade, and you're like, just hold on a day for me.
All the time. All the time.
Like, please don't put it out.
I can't tell you how many times that happened. I mean,
really?
It's, those guys are ferocious. I mean, they're like sharks.
And they give you a heads up at least.
The good ones do. The guys that I really respect, they'll call you in advance, and they'll say, listen, I have this. Can I go with it? And a lot of times, you'll say, can you just give me a couple hours? The hard part is you feel bad when you ask them to wait and then the agent gives it to another guy, and it sort of burns them.
Yeah.
But the guys like Adam Schefter and Jay Glazer that I do respect a lot, they'll give you the chance and know that there's going to be a lot more things that come around that, that again, you want it to be on your terms if you can, but you just can't control that stuff anymore.
Is there a signing or a draft pick what's the one that when you look at it, you say, that's the one I want to have back the most? Is there one as you sit and reflect on it?
That you say that I made a mistake.
Yeah, that you're just, I wish I could do that over again. I know there's very few.
God, I can't. Yeah, no, there's a lot. there's a lot. If I had a crystal ball, I certainly would go back and look at some of those draft picks and sort of ask for a redo. But you put a lot of stock into the team aspect of it, that we have a scouting department, we have a coaching staff, you sort of all want everybody to be on the same page, yet at the end of the day it's your decision and you're the name that's attached to it. And had some great picks that I'm really, really proud of, and there's some picks that obviously did not pan out as well as you would have liked, and that's the business. That's why you got to have broad shoulders and thick skin. You gotta be able to make mistakes and grow from it, and not use it as something that's going to put you in a tough spot, mentally, that's going to put you more in a spot that I'm going to be driven to sort of see what the keys were, the red flags were that I should have seen. Yeah.
Why do you think the draft is such a crapshoot nowadays?
Just because of the human element, number one. Anytime that you're judging the human element, and the passion, the heart, and the ability to see and process information, as smarts, how much you love it. They're the two hardest things to read. Probably no different from when you recruited high school kids. There's kids with all the ability in the world that have the bells and whistles, but you knew that the guys were going to pan out were the ones that wanted it the most.
You don't really know if they love football or until they're in your building.
Yeah, and you go into colleges and you have the coaches as you try, you respect and you have relationships with, but they still bullshit you. They want to be able to have their guy get an opportunity. It's good for the college, it's good for the kid, it's good for everybody. Yet at the same time, when you went to Red Bank High School in New Jersey to recruit a tight end, you were hoping you got the real deal from the coach there. And it's sort of that trickle down effect. You want the right information. It's so important to the process. Yet at the same time, you got to dig and you got to do your own homework. And there's so many things that come into play that that really are part of the puzzle. It's and then, to be honest with you, we go out in the fall and we fall in love with players on tape, and then we essentially confuse ourselves in the spring to some degree. It's like we go out and we fall in love with Adam Breneman on tape because he can stretch a seam, he catches balls in contested situations, and then all of a sudden he runs a shitty 3-cone. On Sunday we don't run the 3-cone at 1:00. I'm sorry.
It's like analysis paralysis, right? You spend too much time sitting there.
Just overthinking the process, and that happens to all of us.
How'd the J.J. Watt signing go down?
Yeah, it was interesting because J.J. sort of forced his way out of Houston, and then we had the opportunity to get in the game, and I talked to his agent at length, and continued to talk about all the different things that we had to offer for AJ or JJ to come out to.
Did you know him before this at all?
I did not know him. Just scouted him in college, and through the process of trying to recruit him, got to know him a little bit, and spent most of the time with his agent, RJ Goster, at the time, and it was interesting because he was such a polarizing figure in terms of recruitment in the free agency process, and it was prior to free agency. So here was a guy that was let out of his contract. Now he's free to look anywhere. And the biggest question was, is he going to go to Pittsburgh with his brother? Is he going to go to Green Bay closer to home? There were all these different thoughts. And I'll never forget John Clayton, who's a friend of mine. God rest his soul. John has since passed, but he was a great information gatherer. And I'll never forget, a couple days prior to us signing him, he put out J.J. Watt's final 3 teams. And one was the Cleveland Browns, I think. For sure the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Green Bay Packers. So I'm thinking to myself, either these guys are great bullshit artists and they're making me feel like we're part of the game because we're told we're at the very top, or we just have no clue and we're being used for leverage, which could have been the case. And as it got closer, I'll never forget, I was on the elliptical on a Sunday night at my house, and RJ and JJ called me and they said that he's going to be a Cardinal. And I was shocked and excited.
Yeah.
And the only people that knew at the time were myself and our owner, Michael Bidwell. And JJ, because of the leaks that were coming out about other teams, I think number one, he respected us a lot because we didn't leak anything and our name wasn't even attached to him. Two, he wanted to put it out himself. So he sent me a picture that night, text, and it was a picture of him squatting with a Cardinal shirt. And that was what he was going to post the next day at 11 a.m.
Yeah.
And it was going to say, source, me.
That's sweet.
And I said, if you put that out, it is going to fucking break the internet.
Yeah.
And it did. I mean, it was like,
put it out,
holy shit, this thing just went out, and it was crazy.
Yeah, you were getting tons of love about that.
Oh, my gosh. It was,
does it always, I bet it feels good. Like, it's probably an interesting dynamic when you sign J.J. Watt, but, like, you and the owner are the only ones that know. You walk in the office the next day and the scouting staff's all there. They're like clapping for you when you walk in.
You know what?
And they're probably like, where'd that come from?
I will be honest with you. It's funny because a lot of guys take pride, obviously, in what they do, and they feel part of it, which is big for me, you know, to involve your scouts. So when you do something like that you have to do for security purposes, it doesn't really feel great because you walk in and you have to tell your head coach last second. You have to tell your scouts after they may have seen it on ESPN. And that part of it doesn't feel good because you want those guys to feel like they're, again, that they have equity in the process. And it doesn't feel great to have them learn because guys can get butthurt. You know, they can feel.
Scout goes home, tells his like girlfriend that it leaks out somehow. You know?
And again, like we talked about in today's day and age with leaks, you just never can tell. Not that we didn't trust our personnel department or our coaching staff, but you know, once you sort of hold it within a circle, and the closer to the vest you are, the more chances you have to keep it tight.
So there's times in those deals that the head coach doesn't even know it's getting done?
Yeah. I mean, you obviously know that your coaching staff would love to have the player.
Yeah.
You'd never force him down a coach's throat that whether he didn't fit schematically or they just didn't feel like the player had anything left. You know that the coaches would love to have that player, but at the same time that the deal's being consummated that you can't really tell the coach.
Man, we could
there are
talk
times
ball.
that you don't tell the coach.
We could talk ball all day. I love these stories. Man. Is there a deal that maybe people don't know about that was like really close to getting done that didn't actually that never came to fruition that would have broken the internet?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that didn't get done. I mean, there was a number of deals that I can think about that would have been really interesting. Tried to trade for Alex Smith and thought maybe we had a shot at getting him when he was with Kansas City, and the Redskins beat us out on that one. And if you ask Andy Reid and Brett Veach, who I think the world of, they know I was pretty hot that I didn't have an opportunity to make that trade with them because I think that they had Andy has a good relationship with the Gruden family, and Jay Gruden was the head coach of the Redskins at the time. So I felt like I was sort of manipulated in that trade situation.
You had some choice words.
And I had some choice words for Brett and Andy, and we sort of I think Andy and I hashed it out over a cheeseburger later at the combine.
I love it. That's great. Tell me the story of how you have the number 1 overall pick and you decide that Kyler's your guy. What goes into what goes into that process once you know you have the number 1 pick and you probably know you're taking a quarterback, right? What goes into that evaluation process, and then how much that was the same offseason you were hiring Cliff, right? Cliff Kingsbury. So just talk me through like that whole, are you thinking what's the best quarterback for our head coach we want to hire? How does that work?
No, the interesting thing is Cliff being part of the hire at the time was number 1 an offensive play caller, which we thought was sort of the right trend that the NFL was going in, to be able to attach a play caller and a quarterback guy to a quarterback that's young, and really followed sort of that scenario. And then on top of that, philosophically, just to say, really, I hope to never have the number 1 pick again, because if I do, I'm probably not going to be the GM. So the fact that we had a number 1 pick, we had to take a guy that was going to be really more than anything the most impactful player for our team at the time. And you could have gone a number of different directions, which is why, to hash it out, feeling like that the quarterback position and having a guy of that caliber, that we couldn't pass him up, not only fitting with what Cliff did schematically, but because that position could catapult your team in the right direction faster than, say, a Nick Bosa or a Quentin Williams, who are both great players and obviously could have been the first pick at the time, especially Nick Bosa, a guy that was probably our highest graded player and a guy that I loved. We spent quite a bit of time with him and got to know him, and obviously his success is not a surprise. Yeah. But at the same time, the fact that we did jump every year in win totals and got to the point where we won 11 games and went to the playoffs, not so sure, again, that I look back on it to even know that Nick Bosa could have done that for us as much as, say, Kyler Murray could have at the time.
So when did you decide that Kyler was the guy? Guys, we have a new sponsor for the Next Up podcast, Caldera Lab, and I am fired up. Because of Caldera Lab, I'm able to put my best face forward. How do I do that? By adding a skincare routine from Caldera Lab into my day every single day. Now, I know what you're saying. There's no way this guy sticks to a skincare routine, but joke's on you, because there's no way this face stays this clean and looks this good without it. And honestly, it's not that hard. I just needed the tools, and now I have them from Caldera Lab. Here's some insight on my personal routine. Number 1, the Clean Slate. It's a face wash that starts and ends every single day for me. Number 2, the base layer, a moisturizer that hydrates my skin. And number 3, the Good, a bedtime night serum that has my skin feeling tighter and smoother than ever before. The skincare world is not just for females anymore, it's for men too, and it's doing wonders for me. So what are y'all waiting for? Go to calderalab.com/AdamB for 20% off their best products. That's a huge discount at calderalab.com/AdamB. And guys, supporting our sponsors like Caldera Lab supports me and allows me to do this podcast every single week for all of you. So please support Caldera Lab at calderalab.com/AdamB for 20% off. When did you decide that Kyler was the guy?
A couple weeks before the draft, Cliff, myself, and our owner sat down and again talked about the pros and the cons and weighed it out. We had a chance to go spend time with Kyler one-on-one and talk about the baseball part of it, which was a concern, whether he wanted to play baseball. Yeah. Being a guy that was a first-round pick in baseball and football. Yeah. Felt comfortable with where we were at there. And then really the next step was to make the decision as a unit, which we did. Everybody was on the same page. And then, prior to the draft, the big thing is to be able to start negotiating before you took the pick, because it certainly helped you from a leverage standpoint. Yeah.
How much are other top picks kind of lobbying themselves to be the number 1 pick during that time?
Oh, tons. And I played, I played it up a little bit because, everybody, just so they wouldn't know where we were going, or I had a back, sort of had some back channels that I could go. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget that day I called Quentin Williams' agent and I called Nick Bosa's agent and obviously told them that they were still in play, which to some degree they were if things didn't work out from a negotiating standpoint. Yeah. But, once you make those phone calls, again, you think that they're phone calls that are private and behind the scenes. Word of mouth then travels, and it sort of messes with people even more that now all of a sudden, if I reached out to those agents, who knows what's really going on. Yeah. So it created a lot of buzz, excitement. You're
kind of messing with people behind the scenes.
It's lying season. It's a time in life that you truly can lie and feel good about it.
Yeah, that's great. How much during the draft are you trying to, all the GMs, how much are you trying to predict what, you're like, I know John Lynch and I really think he's going to take this guy. Is that part of the game? Like,
of course. And then some of your closer friends.
I know Lynch, you'll take
some
this guy.
Some of your closer friends like Jason Light and Schneids and some of these guys at other teams. I mean, you just call each other and bullshit and say, like, seriously, Howie Roseman, who you taking? Yeah. And you just jack each other off and mess with each other. And, sometimes we pick each other's brains. I mean, you'd be surprised at some of the conversations that, if you're close enough friends with a Jason or a Howie or a John Schneider or John Lynch, that how much you pick each other's brains about, did you like this guy? What were your concerns? What was your medical information? Just to kind of sort of checks and balances system.
Yeah, that's got to be
because everybody sees it differently. You'd be surprised how different war rooms can completely see things so differently.
that's got to be funny especially when the guys are your close friends and like it's draft time and they're like, you're giving each other advice and you're like, are they fucking with me though?
Yeah. And especially Howie. I tell Howie all the time, he's a poker player. You don't want to get into a match with him because he will definitely try to send you down that
he's
narrow
got
way.
to be the best right now, right?
He's on a great job. Yeah, he's like a lot of guys that have done it long enough. You learn from your mistakes. You sort of capitalize on the things that you've done well, and just through learning experiences and growing in the business. And he's done a great job of that. A lot of those guys really, again, you learn from your mistakes. That's how you learn the most.
Yeah. As you can probably tell, I love like the process that goes into these big decisions. So curious about we talked about the Cliff Kingsbury decision, but what that process looks like when you're interviewing different coaches. What did that, what does that kind of month or so look like when you're trying to find a new head coach?
Yeah,
it's your call at the end of the day.
Well, it's in sort of in concert with your owner. Obviously he has the final say, but you both sort of have a list of things that you're looking for in a head coach, and generally they're sort of in the same realm. And you go out and you fly around the country, you get on the jet and you pop around to different places, and sometimes you'll interview coaches from different teams and try to double up if two guys at the Rams are hot commodities, and do them in the same day, and then maybe bounce the next day across the country and do a couple guys for the Falcons or whatever it may be. However you line it up, and if you talk to 10, 11 coaches, you get a good understanding of where you're at. And but basically when you go in and you sort of create that list, you sort of have an identity of what you're looking for, whether it's a offensive coach, play caller.
You knew you wanted an offensive guy.
Yeah, wanted an offensive coach that could work with quarterbacks, could develop, and could obviously call plays at the time. No different from Bruce Arians. The other one, when we hired Steve Wilks, I think the mindset was a leader of men, and Steve Wilks was a leader of men, and went that route, and didn't matter if it was a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. Obviously, when you look at the history of NFL coaches and to see their success, there's no exact rhyme or reason. Obviously, Andy Reid, great with quarterbacks, great play caller. John Harbaugh, special teams, great leader. So there's so many different ways of looking at it that, again, at the end of the day, I think leadership is really the number one intangible you have to have.
One of the really cool things that I give you credit for looking back on your tenure there the last 10 years as the GM was how quickly – I feel like if you guys, and I'm sure Michael Bidwell deserves some credit for this, how quickly when you realize you made a mistake that you moved on from it. The perfect example is with Josh Rosen, and how I feel like most GMs would, they pick the guy in the first round and you kind of like, he's my guy, I got to make it work with him. But you very quickly were like, made a mistake, how do we make it right as soon as possible? Where did that trait come from, and where did that was that intentional to hey, as soon as I make a mistake, I got to realize how do we fix it as soon as possible, and not put the Band-Aid on it as soon as we can.
I think it's this business is interesting because as I told you, more than anything, probably through my time spent in the NFL, it's humbling. I mean, if you can sit and pound your chest all you want, and I can sit and tell you that I was executive of the year twice. That's not what I remember. What I remember is the mistakes that I made, the things that I screwed up, and the biggest reasons of sort of my philosophy moving forward and how I learned from my mistakes. And again, it goes back to, I could have held on, and you could have lasted a couple more years and tried to ride it out and try to protect your pick, which makes no sense. Again, it's identifying.
It's an ego play.
It's an ego play. Identify where you've made mistakes. And in some regards, whether it was hiring a head coach or a quarterback, cutting the cord as quickly as you can. Don't get me wrong, it hurts. It's not what you want to do. It doesn't make sense financially. It obviously wastes a draft pick, a high draft pick, if that's the route you go. So it doesn't look good and it doesn't feel good. Yet at the same time, it's your opportunity to make things right. And again, I think it's a way of sort of checking your ego at the door. And feeling like you have an obligation. And what is your obligation? It's doing what's best for the organization, not doing what's best for Steve Keim.
How did you balance need for short-term success and like instant gratification, and the fans want to win right now, while you also have to build your roster for long-term stability. Yeah,
it's the hardest thing about that job. Yeah. It's nobody wants to rebuild. Yeah. When I first took the job, nobody wants to, and listen, to the fans' credit, they don't deserve that. I mean, they pay a lot of money for season tickets. Yeah. You go on a Sunday, and the amount of money you spend for a beer and a hot dog and to get your 3 kids into the game, they deserve your best. And really, it was just to look at things from a three-year view. Yeah. Whether it was contractually, roster building, that sort of thing, and to really, draft as good as you can and supplement through free agency and trades. And really, at the end of the day, to me, it was, you look at the big picture, you do the best you can supplementing, again, trying to bring in guys at reasonable costs, and try to be able to do 1 to 2 year deals. Maybe some of them a lot of prove it deals at first, which sort of dangle that carrot, and you get the best out of guys who've had success. Yeah. And then you draft well, and then so those guys sort of grow within the system. To me, that's the best way to do it. But at the same time, it's easier said than done. You get into a situation where sometimes you panic and you feel the pressure. You start to try to press things, which you're giving up draft picks, you're trading picks, you're making free agent deals that are big money deals with a lot of guaranteed money. And you're taking guesses instead of knowing what that player is. Because a lot of times free agency is fool's gold. You're going after guys and you're giving big money to players that other teams are letting go. And as we talked about Chandler Jones earlier, luckily enough, we were right on that one. Yeah. But in a lot of circumstances, why did that team let a guy walk? Yeah. Because they know everything about the player.
Yeah, they've seen him all the time.
They've seen him. Yeah. And why are they not willing to put big money into this guy?
What are those contract negotiations like with the veterans who are doing second deals, third deals, and when they want a bunch, Saquon Barkley's going through it right now, a buddy of mine, and like, just, balancing the personalities. You got to see the guys in the building, and like that they're not happy and they want more money. And
it's tough because you want to make all your players happy, but at the same time, the general manager position is a thankless spot. If you want to, I always say this: if you want to be a popular, well-liked guy, don't be a general manager. No, because those guys are lined up at your door, and so many of them will come to you and they'll talk to you personally about how disappointed they are, how sad they are about the fact that they haven't been given a bigger deal yet. Yeah. And you have to manage that because essentially, you have to sort of educate them that the salary cap is a large pizza pie, and there's only so many slices that can go around. Yeah. And that's the simple way of saying it. Yeah. But it doesn't matter to them. They want their slices. Yeah. And it even doesn't matter if you're a good guy and you're a good character guy. Mm-hmm. And I respect that. It is a business. They want to be paid. And, when you're going into free agency and a guy gets to free agency and he has the ability to go chase the money, that's generally what they're going to do because that's what's in their best interest. Yeah. And it's not what's in the best interest for the organization. Yeah. But at the same time, you have to respect that. Yeah.
No, that's got to be too. Then you got guys nowadays like running on social media and going and posting stuff. And then you have, when it comes to like holdouts and things like that, what's been like your philosophy, your perspective on that? Like, do GMs usually understand why guys want to hold out? Is it just a leverage play? Yeah. Is that what's
well? I mean, the NFL has put in enough things in the CBA that I think sort of minimizes some of the holdout stuff just because of the amount of money that players are fined. Yeah. But at the same time, you do understand why guys get frustrated in certain situations. But at the end of the day, contracts are done to protect both sides, both the team and the player. Yeah. And from a team standpoint, and when you're a general manager, you really have to sort of face the fact that you're protecting the team from that side. Yeah. So your approach has to be, I'm going to do everything I can to do what's best for the club, not the player. Although you want to make players happy, and that's always generally the best avenue to take, it's not always what's best for the organization. Yeah. And just because every player wants to be paid more, you can't just jump out and pay them. Again, there is a big issue when you start sort of saying, you know what, I'm going to set a precedent here. Yeah. And I'm going to do something different. And then everybody else now is going to be lined up at my door and say, well, you did this for Adam Breneman. Yeah. Why can't you do it for me? Yeah. Well, now all of a sudden you get yourself in that predicament. Yeah. And that's a real issue.
Yeah. And everyone knows what everyone's making at all times. Right?
So as much as you can, you try to stick with a simple philosophy. Here's how we do things. Not everything's the exact same. Yeah. Honesty is always the best example. And sometimes there are times where you feel like honesty is sort of taken out of context because you talk through agents. Sometimes lines of communication are blurred.
The agents kind of put it in his favor.
Agents sometimes want to tell players the way things have sort of been articulated to them when it really wasn't. But at the same time, you just have to do the best you can. Sometimes you have to tell players things that they don't want to hear, which is hard because you do develop relationships and you do care about those guys and you want what's best for them.
I'm just thinking, like, you get phone calls from agents and you're like, this guy's calling because he wants more money for his guy, right?
There's no doubt. Yeah.
They try to be your buddy. You're like, just get to the chase, man. What do you want?
I get it, and
it's got a job to do.
And sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so you have to continue to hear those conversations, and it's tough. Like I said, you want to make people happy in general, but you just can't.
Looking back on it in your 10 years as the GM, what was the most difficult decision you had to make?
Oh, that's a great question. The most difficult decision we had to make. Probably the decision to move on from Josh as quickly as we did and to draft another quarterback who was 5'10". Because if you really think about this, we drafted a guy with a 10th overall pick the year before. We move on from him and trade him. We draft a 5'10" quarterback. We hire a college coach who was fired from Texas Tech. If you look at that now and didn't look at, there were things that were, positives and things that did come well out of those decisions at times. Just on paper, you'd look like I should be in a straitjacket because it doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface. But
it did.
But got a lot of faith in Kyler. He was Rookie of the Year as an offensive player, and he was a 3-time Pro Bowler at that point. He got hurt, unfortunately, and Cliff, I think, did some good things. Great guy and somebody who's had some success there. And I think we did some good things, but at the end of the day, didn't do enough good things. That the NFL's a tough business, and you are what your record says you are.
When you turned that Kyler pick in, was your mind running like, everything I've done in my career is going to be remembered on this pick, how this turns out? Did you feel the magnitude of it when you turned it in?
Yeah, it was sort of make the call, and you think about, like, my favorite movie, Shawshank Redemption. Get busy living or get busy dying. This is either gonna turn out to be a hit, or I'm not going to get the Chandler Swaro's midget league football coaching position.
You'll be coaching high school ball.
Exactly.
Give me a behind the scenes of what draft day is like for you. Like, what is it? It's like your game day, right?
Yeah.
I want to tell you all about our newest sponsor, Athletic Greens. And let me tell you, when I found out about this sponsor, I was fired up because I've been using Athletic Greens for years, and I want to promote to you guys the things I actually use. I love Athletic Greens. As a former Division I athlete, I've tried countless supplements, and recently my nutrition and my health has become a bigger deal for me as I get farther away from my playing career. And let me tell you, Athletic Greens is the real deal. Has me feeling healthy and energized every single day. With as much as I'm on the road, traveling, shooting podcasts, it's hard to have a healthy diet, hard to have healthy nutrition, hard for me to get my vitamins and minerals every single day. My doctor even told me that last time I saw him. But with Athletic Greens, I get 75 plus vitamins, minerals, and a bunch of other healthy things. I don't even know what they are, but I know they're good for you. And when I wake up every single day now, I feel energized. My digestion has never been better, and I'm ready to attack each and every day because of Athletic Greens and AG1. So if you want to take ownership of your health like I am right now, try AG1 today at drinkag1.com/nextup, and you get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs when you go to my link, tryag1.com/nextup. And guys, all of you who support this podcast, you guys supporting our sponsors helps me a ton. So please go support AG1 and support Next Up through the process and optimize your health and nutrition today. drinkag1.com/nextup. Check it out.
No, it's intense. You have so much stuff going through your
Sleeping
head.
the night before? Or
not really.
Much.
Probably not the couple weeks before. Because you're constantly thinking in your mind of different things that can happen. I've had the number 1 pick, and I've had all the way down to the 28th pick or something like that. So there's a million different things that can happen. So many scenarios, so much pre-draft buzz that's misinformation that you get caught up in. So your mind's always going in a million different directions of what could happen. And Then on draft day, you really just have to stick to your gut and your instincts, and sort of trust your board, and just watch the way it falls and hope that good things happen for you. And there's been times where it felt just the way we wanted, and there's a number of times where there have been guys that we had stacked that 4 guys went exactly like we had them ranked right before our pick.
Yeah, wow. What is, thinking back to like day one as a GM, in what way do you feel like you personally have grown the most? Like, what have you learned the most throughout that process? And you look back at, when you first walked in the door there as the guy in charge.
Being yourself.
Yeah.
Being who you are. Not just personality wise, just the decisions you make, the information you take in that you make for the organization. Because again, it's not Steve Keim's decision. Mm-hmm. The picks and the signings and the trades, they're organizational decisions, and they're not about me. They're about what's doing right for the organization, and that's what's most important. Mm-hmm. And keeping that in mind, and not making things personal, not making my ego get in the way, not feeling like I'm upset because people in the building don't agree with what I want to do. Mm-hmm. Again, it's an organizational decision, and don't take things personal. Yeah. Just make sure that you're doing your very best to do what's right for the club. Yeah. And at the end of the day, as long as you can do that, you can look in the mirror and sort of be proud of yourself.
Yeah. I heard this question on a different podcast the other day, and when I heard it, I was like, I need to ask Steve this because it's a good topic, especially in like the evaluation space. What is the relationship between hard work, luck, and talent?
The relationship between hard work, luck,
and what's most important? Like if it's 100%, how much do you need of each? How does it all play into each other?
I would say, and we're going by percentage.
Yeah, whatever way you want to take it.
Yeah, I would say. Well, I mean, we always know that talent has to be the base.
Yeah. It's the same thing Jed Fish said.
And hard work, along with the talent, helps luck come along. I think that's the easiest way to say it. Yeah. Now, having all three is tremendous, but you got to have the base of talent. We all know that. A degree of talent, and that's the great thing about it is Tom Brady to Wes Welker to Julian Edelman to all these different players that were drafted late, picked in different rounds, all these different guys who've had success. There's a rhyme and there's a reason. They had a degree of talent, yet the hard work, the drive, the passion, it took them over the top. Yeah. And then there's been so many talented guys who've underachieved, which has been a killer for people like myself when you evaluate and you see these freakish skills, yet at the same time, a guy has no heart, and it doesn't end good in those situations. Yeah. You can mask things for a certain amount of time, but you can't have sustainable success without hard work and love for the game.
Yeah. You talk about that a lot. About you got to love football. That's like a big. I know it's hard. It's something you can't really grade.
Again, the heart and the mind.
You got to love ball.
The heart and the mind. The heart is what drives the hard work and the passion and the motor that you play with and the mind is the one thing also that people forget about. There's a lot of guys out there that are talented players that actually like to play ball, but you know that if a coach can't trust you to go in the right direction, they can't trust you to make the right sort of angle blocks and eliminate mental errors, you're not going to be successful either. And those two are the hardest things to figure out when you're evaluating a player because it's the human element that you don't see.
Who's the most talented player you've been around?
Been around or scouted?
I was thinking that has played for you, but give me the best you've seen in person.
The highest grade I've ever probably given that to this day, Calvin Johnson. Yeah. Calvin Johnson was the freakiest talent I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. Never seen a receiver that tall, that long, that explosive, that could gear down and stop and start and had that kind of suddenness in a short area that was so long, but could attack the. I mean, just could be dominating to a degree that. I don't even know that we ever saw his best. Even I mean, just he.
So long.
Just in the evaluation process, seeing something that was that rare and unusual for me. I just thought he was as freakish as they get. Mahomes right there, kind of with him with that talent level. from the quarterback standpoint. So those two, and then the guys that I've had here in Arizona, so many good ones. Obviously, the thing Larry did was he put hard work with the talent. Which why Larry was so special. Yeah. He wasn't the most gifted, because he didn't have the elite speed, but his body control was his hands, his just ability to go up and get it in the crowd was just unusual. Yeah. So he was obviously, up there for sure. Kurt Warner had a rare and unusual ability to anticipate throwing the football. Yeah. I mean, he could throw some ducks and some ugly balls. He didn't have the most arm talent, but he could throw people open. He could throw into windows that were just unusual, and he could just see things before they happened. And to me, when you have a quarterback that can anticipate like that to me is the one attribute that the special quarterbacks have is natural anticipation. Who's the guy who had the mindset or that love ball or had the hard work that you're just like, if every dude could be this way, it'd be two guys that stick out the most in my mind that I've had. One was Anquan Boldin. Okay. He was like I always thought he was sort of like a Ray Lewis. Yeah. With an offensive mentality. Mm-hmm. He just attacked balls. He played angry. He played physical. He was a 4.75 guy at the combine. But this guy was so sudden in the short area. His run after the catch was so dangerous. Yeah. And he was so angry with the ball in his hands. Mm-hmm. He was exceptional. And then Budda Baker. Budda Baker's a guy that's, 5'9", 180 some pounds, but plays so big and plays so physical and with no fear. Yeah. He would definitely be a guy. Those two guys, that mentality that they brought are just different. I want to do a little rapid fire game. Yep. I'm gonna name some people you've been around in your career, and give me the first thing that comes to mind when I say their name. Okay, should be fun. Cliff Kingsbury. Smooth. That's a good one. Smooth. I like that. Bruce Arians. Sexy. Larry Fitzgerald. Sophisticated. Kyler Murray. Freakish. Zach Ertz. Pro's pro. DeAndre Hopkins. Game day. Just I don't know how to. Gamer shows up. Competitor. Gamer. Colt McCoy. True pro. Tyrann Mathieu. Animal. That was one of your best picks too, Animal. Right? Steve Wilkes. Leader. Kurt Warner. Magician. Jay Glazer. Stud. He is a beast, isn't he? I love that. Smooth is a good one. I like that. Yeah, sexy for Bruce Arians. That's not what I was expecting. Well, he used to always say 60 and sexy when he was the coach, and Bruce has just got a way about him he's the coolest cat. You know, whenever you're around him, he's just baby, cool baby. He just got a way that's just let's go have a cocktail, baby. And he just has a way about him, and the 5 years I spent with him, man. Not only because it was special being from the same hometown area, but he just became one of my best friends and a guy that will always be like a family member for life, and a guy that I still, weekly catch up with and reach out to. Saying Tyrann Mathieu made me remember. We didn't talk about that. That was one of your. Yeah. I feel you went against what a lot of people thought you should do when you. That was my first draft in 2013. Your first draft, so I'll never forget. I had his name to look at, and I looked down at the piece of paper again. Kicked out of LSU, rumored to have 10 drug tests failed. My first draft as a general manager, there is zero chance that I'm even going to consider this guy because I'm not going to put myself in that position. Right, I'm going to be a little more conservative. And I'll never forget, I turned on the tape and I started watching it, and I had never seen anything like it. For a guy his size, a guy who did not possess elite speed, his short area quickness, his instincts, his feel for the game, natural anticipation from a defender standpoint, and the ability to just somehow the ball just found its way to him every snap almost. I mean, balls bouncing up in his hand, interceptions, returns for touchdowns, was just remarkable. And I'll never forget watching the tape and being pissed because I'm like, God, I wish I could take him. Right. So I'll never forget. We called and set it up where we flew him into Phoenix for a visit because I wanted to get to know him personally. I'll never forget. I went to a steakhouse locally with that night. My son Carson, who's going to be a senior in high school, went with me, and we went and we sat there. And about halfway through the dinner, it was myself, my son, Todd Bowles, our defensive coordinator, and halfway through the dinner, my son's pulling at my shirt, and he's like, "Dad, this guy's really cool," and I'm like. Not only did I love the tape, the kid had just a smile and an infectious personality.
Yeah.
And, really at that point in time said, you know what, if there's any deterrent to this kid not having success, number one, he's going to go back to New Orleans from a tough area that he grew up in. And really, where does his life go from there?
Yeah.
Two, if he loves the game enough, that's going to be the deterrent to stay in the NFL and make money and change not only his life, but his family's life.
Yeah.
And fortunately, for us, we felt confident that would be the direction that he went in, and thank God that he did. He made us all right and made a career for himself and a career to be proud of, and a career for young kids to look at and know that if they made some mistakes in their life,
come out of it.
You can have some second chances, and you can make right on a wrong.
Yeah, that's like the dynamic too. I think about even when draft day comes is knowing that every GM is human at the end of the day, and even same thing with head coaches, same thing. There's always in the back of your mind, like protecting yourself a little bit. And as general managers, there's like a safe pick where even if it goes wrong,
that's right.
Everyone's like, well, he made the right pick. The guy just didn't turn out.
Right.
Where then you make the risky pick like Tyrann Mathieu, and it's like, if I'm right, I get gets talked about for a long time. If I'm wrong, it's why didn't you take the safe pick? And it's like that thing you got to play in your head all the time.
And I'll say this: I learned a lot of lessons in life through that that position. That really where we grew up in Pennsylvania is such a different area, right? It's sort of Leave It to Beaver world. It's football, it's mean potatoes, it's a certain way of life. And, if you have a couple beers as a high school kid, you think you're being bad.
Yeah.
You learn to understand different cultures and to respect that and to know that these kids come from different places and then you can't judge it. Something that I would have looked back and said, man, this guy's a bad. No, he grew up in a certain culture and he made some poor decisions.
Yeah.
I made a lot of poor decisions in my life. Yeah. I made poor decisions in my life as an adult.
Yeah.
And guess what? When you have a second chance, what defines you is sort of how you come out of it.
Yeah.
Is how you get through adversity,
yeah.
and how much you change your life because of the mistakes you made, whether you're proud of them or not. And I have several things I'm not very proud of that have made me a better person.
Yeah.
And in those regards, it taught me a lot about humans, that you really can't judge a book by the cover, and you can't look at guys that have had mistakes coming out of college or in teenager years that coming from a bad area. You really have to sort of give those kids a right to have success and to teach them and to put them in an environment where they can succeed. And once you do, when they have success, it gives you a great sense of pride.
Yeah, it really does. What have you been doing since you got out of it? What's day to day like? Just enjoying life?
Yeah, man. Going on some recruiting visits with my son, who's going to be a senior next year. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Recruiting has changed a lot since you and I went through it. Maybe not as much since you went through it.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff for myself. After 25 years, it's good to have just things that you can do for yourself, whether it's just self-care, exercising more, eating better, learning more about life and your mistakes that you've made in the past, and trying to understand what's going to make you happy moving forward. I've very few people can say I'm 50 years old, and man, I was so blessed to be able to live out a childhood dream.
Yeah.
That I was one of 32 people in the world for 10 years of my life, and to wake up every day during that period of time and my feet hit the floor, man, and I was like, thank you, God, I can't even believe I get to do this for a living.
Yeah.
And looking back on it, man, it's something I hope everybody in this lifetime gets an opportunity to do that with their careers, and to have that self-fulfillment, like you got to get recruited by every top school in the nation and you got to play at an elite level. That's rare.
Yeah.
And you got to be thankful for the things that you were given. And I am so appreciative of the opportunities I've had and things I've seen, the experiences I've had, and more than anything, the people that I've gotten to know.
Yeah.
I've gotten to know some of the greatest people in the world through those experiences, and just very, very, very proud of those opportunities.
So what's next? What are you doing? The media stuff?
I was thinking two guys from PA that we grew up so close, so we could maybe get into a podcast.
I'm going to be pitching you on it after off air. I think we need to.
I have some media things in the works that I might do in the future, and haven't closed the book on doing some personnel stuff. May have had some talks with other GMs about some consulting gigs, but just want to take some time and make sure that I make the right decisions in life and have the right experiences moving forward, because I know that sort of this last chapter is going to be the best. Yeah, so excited to see what it brings.
No doubt. Did you enjoy doing the draft coverage?
I loved it.
Was that fun?
I loved it.
Probably a little different, right?
Yeah, I did it with LeVar Arrington and
I saw that.
Jay Glazer, of course, and Rob Stone, and we had a lot of fun, man. Yeah. And it was so different. It was great to be able to evaluate the players in the draft process like I had before. Yet at the same time, I didn't have to take any of the heat from the picks.
I heard you when you got on Good Morning Football. You said something that was so funny. You said, "I'll not get held accountable for my opinion."
Yeah.
Peter Schrager was like,
I could have an opinion on every guy, and at the end of the day, nobody's going to care or remember it. Yeah. But at the time, it sounded pretty good.
Man, you just got to have some bold opinions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's the way to go in life, is to be able to spit out some knowledge and to be able to let the fans in sort of that's the fun thing for me is to have these conversations that moving forward, to let fans sort of behind the curtains, because I've done Hard Knocks, I've done All or Nothing, and some of the cool things about doing those TV shows during my time as a general manager was that people got to see behind the scenes, and so many fans want more and more of that, and to have the opportunity to come on your show here and talk about some of my experiences, and maybe moving forward to have opportunities on a podcast or a show to talk about even more and more, because there's so many experiences over that time that I had that the fans would love to hear.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's almost like hard to do this podcast because there's so many things we could dive into. We could do it for like 4 hours, we got to save it for a future podcast. But like the cool thing is like, you literally have a perspective that no one else has. 10 years, 25 with the same program, with the same team. It's just like you just have more of it's really unique. Like that's why I'm excited for you in the whole media space. We'll see what kind of route you go down, but because I think you could really bring a voice to the game that's very different than what's on there normally.
Well, it does. Sort of the lenses that I've looked through all those years does bring a different perspective. Not to say it's right, or I think if more of anything, maybe hope to educate some of the fans, or to have them understand sort of how we viewed it from a front office standpoint, which I think is beneficial for everybody to hear. And it's fun for me to talk about, because I am so passionate about what I did, and to talk about the game of football, which has been a great privilege of mine throughout my career.
Let me ask you this: what advice would you give a young person like you who wants to get into the NFL, even just any kind in the football world, and wants to have the success that you've had?
I think to start is just like I said earlier, be you. Yeah. And be you is, number one, you got to be confident in your evaluation. So many times in this business, when you have evaluations as a younger scout, you get concerned that the GM or the more experienced scouts may not agree with you, and that's not what you get paid for. You get paid for your opinion, and if you have the instincts and you have a feel for the game and you put in the work as an evaluator, you have the right to have a voice at the table, and have a strong voice, and don't come off that voice. When you sit there with the big boys in a draft room, have conviction. Yeah. And that's really what helped me in my career. Whether I was right or wrong, I came in with conviction. And that's what coaches and scouts that have worked with me in the past would tell you. There's I wouldn't say politically correct way, I would say a professional way of articulating your thoughts, yet at the same time, be convicted. Don't come off of the way you felt. And if somebody doesn't agree with you, you're going to agree to disagree. Time will tell if that player turns out. But come with conviction. Be strong in your opinion, and do the work. People can tell if you cut corners. If you're convicted and you're passionate about what you do, you're going to find some of the little details about the player and the evaluation that other people aren't going to bring to the table.
Last couple of things I got. What's something about the job that you're going to miss the most, do you think?
The people, the interaction daily.
Yeah.
You know, the interaction you have with the players at times, your scouts, the coaches. You know, it's no different from when you coach. It's the camaraderie, the locker room
nothing
atmosphere.
Like it, right?
No, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Walking out on game day, the butterflies that you feel, and you know, being a GM was crazy because you lived and died on every snap. I mean, that's your career, right? The wins and losses.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, once the team is on the field, there's nothing you can do about it. I'm not calling any plays. I'm not calling any defenses. But I think our owner, Michael Budda, would tell you that as many times as I kicked windows and punched things. And
You're animated up there?
The language that I used was probably not for children to hear.
I love it. When Cardinals fans and NFL fans think about your tenure as a GM, when they think about Steve Keim now, what do you want them to think about?
That I got up to the plate and I swung.
Yeah.
You know, that I tried my very best, and that you know, sort of like the movie Tin Cup, I didn't try to lay it up. I tried to do it the right way, yet at the same time I was willing to take the chances and take the risks to improve the organization and to give the fans a product that they were proud of.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you doing this. It's been like an hour and 10 minutes. I appreciate all your time. I love you, man. You've been close to me and been super helpful throughout my career. So absolutely. I'm excited to see you. I'm hoping you're on television soon and doing that for a long time. Maybe you're back in. I don't know, but it's been fun, and hopefully we can do some more podcasts together, man.
Yeah, same, man. I'm proud of you as well.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Gotcha.
That wasn't too bad, right?
Yeah, it was good. All good?
Yeah, we're good.
Let's get a pick.
Yeah, let's do it.